Hi guys, this is David with Northwest Horsemanship. I have with me a 4-year-old colt that I need to start under saddle, and he's never been started under saddle. I don't really know if he's had a saddle on him or not. I do know he's been handled pretty extensively, so I'm not dealing with necessarily a wild horse. He's an Arab, so obviously he's a lot quicker than a lot of other horse breeds are. And there's a couple of things that I noticed about him. One is that he is an extremely smart horse, and he likes to be really in your space. He's very interactive. He likes to use his mouth and kind of greet you and mess with you and search your pockets and stuff like that. More often than not, he's ready to run you over rather than be scared of you or whatever. So there's pretty much kind of two major categories of horses that you'll notice that when you work with. Some are a little bit more flighty and scared, and oftentimes are more likely to want to be with other horses. Others are kind of in your pocket, in your space. They're a little bit more pushy. They're not as likely to get out of your space as easily. Those horses also tend to be a little less frightened of things in general or man-made things. It's not, always 100% true, but in general, those are the two different categories. And then there's two other separate categories too. You have a horse that is more likely to run away from a situation, and a horse that's more likely to buck in a situation. So a horse that's a little bit more stubborn, doesn't want to move his feet, generally those are more likely to buck when you first put him under saddle. A horse that is more likely to run away from the situation, they'd much rather bolt when you first put him under saddle. And sometimes you don't really know exactly which one you got until you actually put the saddle on. I would say just from being around this horse for a few days and watching and observing his behavior and working with him a little bit, he's not likely to bolt when I stick him under saddle. He's not likely to bolt when I get on him. He's, in my observation, much more likely to probably buck if something is really uncomfortable because he doesn't like it, and he has a very strong personality in that way, but he's not necessarily scared. But they all respond a little differently. Sometimes you'll get a horse that'll buck or bolt, and sometimes you'll have a horse that's perfectly fine. Generally, horses that have been handled a lot are less likely to react negatively in a big way, but that's not 100% true. So you just, the biggest thing is when you're working with horses, don't make a lot of assumptions. I can kind of guess a little bit, but basically I'm going to try and keep myself prepared and go through my exercises the same as I would with any other horse. There's a few differences that I would do with a horse that's a little bit more in your bubble, in your space, and that is that I don't like them being in my space so much, and I'll spend a little bit more effort clearing them out of my space, getting them out of my space. And a horse that's a little bit more scared of you, I'll spend a little bit more trying to draw them and less time pushing them away. A horse that's a little bit more scared is going to need a lot more desensitizing and a lot more like sacking out kind of things. He's particularly sensitive, but he's not reactive. So it's made it so a lot of the exercises are relatively easy. I've done some preparation groundwork already. Just kind of the basics. I've worked with him a little bit before, and today, my goal today is just to progress through the exercises. If you find that your goal is kind of like, I want to ride this horse today, I'm going to get on this horse and ride him, you might end up not reaching that goal, and you might figure, you're kind of failing at it, whatever. I find that I prefer to just progress through the exercises and see where we go, and let him kind of decide our pace. So if he gets stuck on an exercise, we're going to work on that until we kind of get through that, and I'm not too worried about how far we get today. So if I get on his back today, great. If not, great. It doesn't really matter. The point is that we're going to make progress on exercises. Everything that I'm going to do with him is in preparation to be ridden and re-ridden safely. Okay, and what I mean by safely is that really my safety is paramount. That's the number one thing. So whatever I need to do to make sure that I'm going to be safe when getting on his back is what I'm going to do. A lot of people, obviously that's the goal for everyone, and sometimes that can keep you from actually getting on your horse and riding. But if you do all the right preparation exercises, there's really no reason to be afraid of them and get on them. And I'm going to show you some of those basics here. Again, we're not going to go super in-depth, so it's not going to cover everything, but I'm just going to cover what's needed for this particular horse in this scenario. So I've already done a lot of the groundwork exercises, got control of his feet. I have worked with the 2 points on the side. Before I get on any horse or before I saddle them up, I want to make sure that they're responsive to at the very minimum the hind quarter point, so that when I'm on their back and I put my foot back here, I know that I can disengage their hindquarters. So that's done by putting that finger there, and that disengaging is where this inside leg is going to cross underneath that outside leg. If they cross over the top, then that's not a sufficient yield. They really need to cross inside. So what I'll do is I'll put my thumb there. If they don't respond, then I'll tap, 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 and I'll wait for that crossover. And in the beginning, I'm just asking for one step, but after we've done it a few times, then I might ask for 2 steps and 3 steps, and then I might ask for 180 degrees or 360 degrees, just whatever I feel like I want. But in the beginning, always ask for that first step. If you just start asking for, like, I want to spin in a whole circle with you crossing over, you're just going to end up failing. So make sure you start really incrementally, and really at the beginning, just ask for that one step, that one little try. Same thing with a 4/4 yield. So if I put my thumb here on the shoulder, I want his crossover there. He did that perfectly, where his inside leg closest to me is going to cross right in front of his other leg. I don't want it to be behind, and I don't want him to be walking forward. So one of the things that I'll do to kind of help him in the beginning is I will put my hand up here on their halter, and sometimes I'll guide him a little bit. And then this also allows me to add a little bit of pressure if I need to. Now with him, I've already been doing this with him, so he's kind of got it down. I don't really find that I need to do a whole lot to get him responding really well. So, all right, so let's go ahead and go to the next step. We've done a lot of those preparation exercises. I've done yields with him on the near side and far side. And what I mean by that is I want to make sure that he's responding to the sensitivity on his halter and not on me being on that side. So I can flex him from the opposite side really well on both sides. It's really, really important that you do both sides equally. The other exercise that I've been doing is jumping up and down and jumping on his back and rubbing all over him. Now, when I do this particular exercise, you'll notice there's 2 things that I do to be safe. First thing is I keep this lead short so that if he goes to do something, I can jump down and pull his head towards me. Right? If you leave it too long, you give them the opportunity to kind of run away from you, and they could potentially kick you or, something like that. So I want to keep this relatively short so that I can jump down, pull on his head, give me the 2 eyes. Okay, so this particular exercise is just long enough that there's some slack here, but I'm not pulling his head. I'm going to jump, jump, jump. If you start out right here, jump, 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 jump against their side where they feel you, and they're reactive. Well, obviously you need to work on that before you progress. He's not reactive, so then I stop. And then go again, jump, jump, jump. This time I'll go on his back and keep my feet together. That's the second thing. So if you keep your feet together, you're going to be safe, because you can just jump down as soon as he does anything, wants to run away or kind of hop or duck or whatever, gets kind of freaked out. You can easily jump down, pull their head towards you, and then try it again. He didn't do anything. He's pretty interactive with me up here. I like that. I encourage that. I don't want him to nip me or anything, but other than that, he's free to interact with me here. I'm going to be pretty active with my hands, especially the offhand, rubbing him all over as much as I possibly can. Lots and lots of rubbing. You can never do too much of that. Do that exercise on both sides. A lot of you are going to need a mounting block to do that exercise. I use the mounting block a lot. I'm not with him right now, and that's not for any particular reason, except I just don't have it in here at the moment. Me jumping up on him and doing a lot of shenanigans is only going to be really good for him. I want to see a dramatic reaction from him on the ground. And the reason for that is that I don't want to see a dramatic reaction by the time I get in the saddle. So I want to do everything I can to kind of tempt the dramatic reaction while I'm safe on the ground, so that by the time I get in the saddle, I've kind of seen everything. So you'll notice that here with the saddle, I have a couple of feed bags. So what I'm going to do, if we can progress this far, is I'm going to saddle him up, cinch him up. I've got the stirrups on this time. I put a saddle on him before and did a bunch of groundwork exercises, and he did pretty good. He was a little uncomfortable at first, but nothing dramatic. I didn't have stirrups attached to the saddle so that he wasn't too worried about it. It was just the saddle being on him and cinched up, and he did really, really well. So this time, I'm going to put the saddle on him, and the stirrups are going to be on there, and then I'm going to use some baling twine, and I'm going to tie some feed bags on there. Now, ideally, if you can, get your hands on some marine buoys. because those are rubber, so they're soft, they're not going to hurt him, and they've got some weight to them. And if you hang those off the saddle, it's kind of like your legs kind of flopping around up there, and it gives them the opportunity to kind of feel what it's going to be like with a person on top of their back. I don't have any marine buoys right now, so I'm going to have to make do with some feed bags and just see if he's going to give me any reactions. Like I said, I want to see the reactions while I'm safe on the ground. I don't want to get in the saddle and be surprised by anything. So let's go ahead and get him saddled up. Like I said, I've saddled him once before and did some groundwork with him. So this time I'm going to go ahead and saddle him up again, but I'll use the same techniques as if I've never done it before, which is that I'll let him investigate it, see it. I want him to be really comfortable with it, and then I also want to touch him with it, not just throw it over their back, make sure they're comfortable. He's not reacting negatively, so I'm free to go ahead and put this on him. You'll also notice that I haven't tied him, and that's for a deliberate reason, because if he were to suddenly get scared and jump away, we wouldn't have a big wreck on our hands. So I am doing this with just holding his lead rope in my hand. All right, so this is, I've been using kind of a saddle that's my backup saddle for starting, just so that if he were to do something crazy and roll on it or something like that, it wasn't going to wreck my main saddle. This is my main saddle. It's very similar to the saddle I used last time, but it's the saddle that I prefer to get on a horse with. This is a treeless saddle, so it's not going to have technically as much security as a treed saddle, but it should be just fine for what I need. As long as you have it nice and cinched down, there should be no problems. I dropped the lead, and I need to keep that in my hand as I cinch him up. Notice that he's really just checking everything out. He's got a lot of curiosity. I really like that. I don't want to do anything to discourage that curiosity. Stay there, buddy. The curiosity is always a good thing. I always prefer a horse that's curious about situations that would maybe otherwise worry a horse. Obviously, it's not really worrying him, so I feel pretty comfortable to just progress through this without a whole lot of fanfare, which is good. You don't want it to be eventful. This should be a really boring experience. That's the success criteria right there. It's boring. Yeah, I got on my horse's back. Nothing happened. That was boring. Or in this case, maybe it's just putting the saddle on him and lunging him around and doing some groundwork exercises, and that was it, and that's boring. And that's exactly what you want. So I have a pretty fair bit of confidence. I don't have to worry about it. When you first saddle a horse up for the very, very first time, it's really, really important that you get the cinch nice and tight that first time, because as soon as they start moving, usually they'll be fine when you saddle them up, but as soon as they start moving is when they're likely to freak out. And the last thing you want is that saddle to slide down underneath them and have a big wreck. So make sure that you get that nice and tight. And I'm going to get it nice and tight this time too, because like I said, I've only put the saddle on him once before, so I'm not 100% convinced. I never make the assumption that we aren't going to have a big wreck if I let my guard down. So I'm going to make sure that I do the right thing, cinch it up nice and tight before we do the groundwork. Him walking around, he's probably not going to be too concerned about it. And obviously I didn't attach, you'll notice that I did not attach the feed bags to the saddle before I put it on him, because if he's scared of the feed bags while I'm trying to cinch him up, we could have a big wreck on our hands, and that wouldn't be good. So I want to make sure I have this nice and tight first. And I noticed I forgot my breast collar out here, so I'm going to have to run get that. We're going to get this a little tighter. It's not crazy tight, but on treeless saddles, you do need to make sure they're plenty tight, because they'll tend to slide around and whatnot. So right now, if I do this and I get to kind of see him react, he's not going to have a whole lot of lateral balance, so I got to be really, if I get on him, when you get on a new horse in the beginning, especially a young horse and a horse as narrow as he is, your lateral work has to be a little bit on the careful side, because they're not used to that top level there's a lot, they become essentially top heavy when you're on their back, and they can easily kind of tip over. So, just work into that lateral work so that they figure out how to balance with you up there, because you're adding all this weight on above their balance point. Okay, so I have this pretty tight. I think I can tighten this just down one more notch. Let's see. Not quite. Not yet. I'll let him walk around just a little bit. I'm going to go grab that breast collar, tie him up right here, and go grab the breast collar. And if he was showing me any kind of reactions right now, I would not be tying him up right here. I just want to point that out. I would need to make sure that he was not tied as I went to go grab something. But he's going to be fine for a second.
10 seconds later.
All right, and we have our breast collar. So, going to untie him again, put this on. I don't want to be putting stuff on him right now while he's tied up. I don't want to give us an opportunity to have a problem. He's doing everything really well, but one thing to keep in mind or keep note of is when you're working with a horse, a new horse, your tendency is to be a little on the scared side unless you've done this a lot. And that's normal. Pay attention to your heart rate, your breathing, because they can sense that really, really easily. They can tune into your heart rate and breathing and anxieties and whatnot. And basically what can happen is that your anxiety becomes essentially their anxiety if you're not careful. So it's really important that you be in touch with how you're feeling going through all this and how they're kind of responding to you as well. So because your emotions very easily transmit to them, because they're being prey animals. They're very, very likely to. They're far more. Let's just say they're far more observant than humans are, or predators in general. And okay, that's on there. That's good. Now, before I put the feed bags on there, I'm going to do some groundwork with him, make sure that he's comfortable with that, because we've got some stirrups on here now. These are going to flop around and see how he's a little surprised there. That's fine. I'm not going to want to be careful right now, because that's a weird thing to say. But what I mean by that is I'm not going to be like sneaking around him. I'm not going to be sneaking around my horse. I don't want to be like overly cautious, because I could basically end up making it harder for myself later. I want to see, if something is going to cause him a big reaction while I'm down here and safe on the ground. And if it does, then I'm going to be basically doing that until he relaxes about it. So he was a little worried about this, bumping him on the side. He was like, whoa, that's uncomfortable. That's unusual. It's unnatural, whatever. And so I'm going to do that a few times until he's completely comfortable with that. He was pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other side. Same thing. Just bumping with it. He's kind of invading my space a little bit. He's okay. I've worked with him a little bit before, so I'm letting him be a little bit closer to me than I would a brand new horse, because I already have a pretty good idea of what he's like and what he does. But a lot of horses, if they're kind of stomping on your space and they're kind of pushing you off your feet a little bit. What I mean by that is when they start entering your space, your default reaction is to back up, and that's never a good thing, because that tells them that they're in charge, not you. You have to always be in charge. Notice that when I just backed him off my space, look at how he licked and chewed. So it's kind of a acknowledgement that I'm his boss. And he snorted, it kind of breathed out, and said, okay, I need to respect your bubble. That's what he basically told me. Now with him, again, I want to be the one to kind of enter his space all the time. I don't necessarily want to be inviting him in my space a whole lot, because he tends to be in your bubble all the time. So you'll see that I don't invite him a whole ton. Not yet. Not right now. So Do this a couple times. His reactions are pretty positive. He's showing basically think about, green light, yellow light, red light kind of a situation. Like when you do something with them, which one are they showing you? When he reacted negatively, he was showing me a little bit of a yellow, not a real big one, because he didn't react real strongly to it. If they react like crazy and they just go kind of up in the air and they freak out and they want to get away from it and they're scared and they got that wide-eyed look and their head's up in the air, that's a big red light. Obviously, you need to spend some time with that particular exercise and get them comfortable and okay with it. He's just moving around. I want to see him just be here completely relaxed and unworried about it and not moving his feet. I'm not going to make him stand there. I'm not going to make him stand still. That's really, really important because he's got to make his own decision. He's got to make his mind up that things are okay. If I try and make him stand still, one thing that does is it causes some claustrophobia, and they can get a real bad reaction out of that. And it's always the wrong move. Always get the horse to want to stand there on their own. That's actually your sign that things are going to be okay. That's your sign that he's going to be all right with whatever's going on. So right now, if he was to start freaking out and reacting and backing all the way around the round pen, I would not be trying to hold him or pull him towards me. I keep his eyes on me, but I don't necessarily, I definitely don't want to stop him from moving. I'll let him move. I'll go with him, go as far as he wants to go, and I'll just keep following him and keep doing this with some rhythm until he completely relaxes. Now, every time you stop, he just relaxed there, stood there, no negative signs. I'm going to rub him, tell him I'm a good boy, check it again, come back and do that again. Make sure he doesn't move. And there's some slack here, but it's short enough that I could pull him if needed. And it's important that there's slack there. If you're holding it tight, if you're holding this right here, that's going to make him claustrophobic, and you're going to have a problem that's, you're trying to force your horse to stand there. You don't want to do that. Give him some slack, about, basically an arm's length, a little bit more usually. And that allows you to stay with him, keep their eyes bumped towards you. If he moved his head towards me, I would use my palm to basically pop him behind the jaw and say, no, stay out of my space. I don't want him to move me off my space. I don't want him to move me off my feet, basically. Okay? That side looked pretty good. Next phase is I'm going to slap the stirrup on his side. It's going to make a big sound, but there's no, and it's going to kind of jerk on the saddle a little bit, but there's nothing negative happening to the horse. It just makes a big flopping sound. And again, this is for the same reason. I want to see if there's any big reactions here. I want to make sure that he's nice and calm to anything that the stirrup would do or my leg would do if I'm on his back. So I want to be slapping this against the saddle. If he wants to walk around, I'm going to go with him. The only thing that I'm going to do right now is if he moves around, I'm just going to keep his eyes kind of towards me. I want to stay at this 45-degree angle to him. Okay? Not necessarily basically pointing his eyes directly towards me. I'm just staying at the 45-degree angle. So I'm just going to go with him, not holding him here. Let him decide when he's going to stop. If he wants to quit, I'll relax there for a minute. Sometimes leaving him alone, not touching anything, he's showing a sign of relaxation right now with a little licking and chewing. Leaving them alone completely is one of the best rewards you can give a horse. Oftentimes you think, oh, this is a reward, giving him food or petting him or whatever. One of the best rewards for a horse is actually just completely leaving him alone. Don't touch him. Don't rub on him. Just your body language is in a neutral position. You don't have a whole lot of positive forward energy, but you're just kind of neutral. That's one of the best ways to get him to relax. Okay, and do it again. Do it with rhythm. I don't want to be increasing my rhythm right now. That would be the wrong thing because that would be telling him he needs to move. But I'm just going to maintain the same rhythm, and I'm only going to stop when he stops and he's got to relax over this. Okay? And I got to do this exercise really until I can do it right here and he doesn't move at all. You'll notice the last 2 times that I did it, he wanted to kind of walk around, walk off a little bit. That was great. Okay? I don't need to do it a whole bunch. He didn't move at all. I'll reward him. Now I can come rub him a little bit. Come do it one more time. Now I do want to be able to do this while he's walking too. So we are going to get to that as well. But in the beginning, I want him to be able to just stand there and not feel like he needs to do anything or move. Okay? Switch sides. He's invading my space a little bit. I'm just going to pop him behind that jaw and say, move back. Notice I didn't move. My feet were basically glued to the floor, and I say, you move away from me. I mean, if he's really like freaking out over something else like the saddle and they're bucking or something, you got to get out of the way because they don't care. They don't care what's in front of them when there's something like jumping on their back like a tiger. They'll run you right over. So you got to get out of the way in those situations. But right now, if he's just kind of invading my bubble for no reason, definitely you don't want to be moving back. You can move forward. You can move towards them. Do what you got to do. Get them out of your bubble. You can use your lead rope. If you got an especially like pushy horse that won't get out of your space, just giving them a little pop on the end of the nose if necessary. It could really, really help with that. I have not had to do that with very many horses ever, except really, really big, overly invasive horses that are just kind of aggressive. Then you might need that, but most of the time you don't. Most of the time, just a hand behind the jawline, then come back and rub. If you needed to touch anywhere with their head, if they're bumping you with their head and you need to bump them off, always come back and rub there. That's really important because you don't want to ever to get them kind of head shy or whatever. Okay, you want to come back to where I was trying to be. Oop. That was fine. Good job. Okay, new side. Same situation here. He wants to walk off. I'll walk with him. That was pretty good. Leave him alone for a second. This really tells them that they did the right thing. You know, if you, it's also why a lot of times when somebody's trying to get an exercise, let's say you're trying to get them to yield and they're standing there ignoring you and you quit, you're basically desensitizing them to that pressure. So it's really, really important that you follow through with whatever you need to do. That's one of the big things that makes a difference between a sensitizing exercise and a desensitizing exercise. Okay, a sensitizing exercise, basically you're doing something to invoke a response, and you do it until you get the response, and then you stop. A desensitizing exercise is you're doing something until the response goes away, right? So if he moves when I'm doing this, I'm just going to keep doing it, and then the response that I want is him to stop, stand still, and relax. And that's when I stop. And that's what tells him he's done the right thing. Right? When I stop doing that action, he kind of figures out what is the last thing that I did that made that go away. Right? Really good response there. No, which is that there was no response. Good response is no response. You shouldn't react at all. No reaction is a good thing. All right, we're ready to go ahead and progress. Really important that you not tie a horse up when you are doing this. Make sure you have the lead rope in your hand, because the probability, see how he's getting real worried about this. Do I want to tie it to him when he's real worried about it being around him? Not really. He needs to know that this is okay. All right, he's not reacting in a big way. He's really curious. I want to encourage the curiosity. If he wants to check it out, that's great. If your horse is reacting over this, I want to stay there, and then when they stop reacting, then you retreat. You pull it away, basically. Having them follow something scary, that's always a good thing. It builds their confidence. That's great. I'll bring it away. I'm not doing anything that's making it super scary right now. He's going to be super curious, so I'm going to let him be really curious. I'm not trying to frighten him. It's really, really important that you're not trying to frighten your horse. You're just trying to find out if they're going to react. Okay, so we start slow and gradually amp it up. All right, if I start making some sound with this, really it moves and makes a noise. That's the two things horses are afraid of: things that move and make noises, which is basically the whole world. Sometimes stationary objects too, like stumps, you know. All right. Notice I'm not walking towards him right now. Just making the noise. He's not worried about it. That's good. I'm going to see if I can come up here and touch him with it. He's not too happy about that. So just going to follow him. I'm going to try to keep it right there. Get him to go around me in a circle so I don't got to chase it. I'm going to keep it here. When should I stop? When do you think I should stop doing this? That's right. When he stops moving his feet and shows me a sign of relaxing. I'm actually going to pull him away from there so that the camera can see a little bit better. All right? Keep him off to your side, by the way. You don't want him directly in front of you. He might run you over. Keep him off to your side. Be at the 45-degree angle. Okay, so he stopped moving his feet, started licking and chewing. I went ahead and pulled it away. Leave him alone. You can rub him if you want with your hand. Be like, good boy. There, that's fine. Okay, come back. Touch him with it. Always start at the shoulder. Every desensitizing thing that's new and scary, you want him to sniff it first. Kind of be around their space first. Always start at the shoulder. That's the safest place to be. He doesn't react, I'm going to bring it away. If basically I brought it away when he started reacting, I'm teaching him to move away from the bag. I'm teaching him to move away from the object, and I don't want him to learn that. I don't want him to learn to move away from a scary object. It's very much the opposite of Mother Nature in this case. Mother Nature says, run away from anything that moves and make a sound. And I'm saying, don't run away from anything that moves and make a sound. He's doing real good. Notice that every time I approach and retreat, I've gone up a step, right? So I don't want to stand here and like increase the pressure until I get a response. Come over, do the last thing you were doing. If you gave no response at all, go ahead and retreat away. Don't immediately amp up that pressure. If he wants to be curious about it, I want to encourage that as much as I possibly can. I love that about a horse. That's always a great sign. Alright. Right now, if he were to jump away, see, he's a little nervous about it being close to his head here. I'm not going to get closer than this, but I'm going to rub here until he kind of goes to a neutral response. He's not in this. Okay, so he kind of freaked out and almost jumped on top of me, and I had to kind of get out of his way a little bit and bump him off me. So he kind of saw what happened, I think, is he kind of got to see a little bit of glimpse of it behind him, and it freaked out. He freaked out a little bit, and he kind of jumped off of me. I like to see that head come down. If he wants to stand here for like 15 seconds and not react, then I'll bring it away anyways. Okay, he didn't react. He's scared of it, but he's not reacting, and so that's fine. He's not concerned about it at all. He's watching something else. Okay, I'm going to come up and do it again. It's kind of funny right here because he's actually watching the dogs. He's not worried about this bag at all. You know, it kind of bothers him a little bit. He's not giving a giant reaction, which is always good. I'm not going to... It's really important. I don't want to put this over on his other side where he's going to see it out of his right eye and jump on top of me again. I definitely don't want that to happen. So keep everything on this side. Go down his legs. Retreat. Good boy. Got his attention back there. He kind of was focused on something else for a minute, and he wasn't really paying attention to the bag, which is kind of it's kind of funny, but that's actually kind of a good sign because he wasn't worried about what I'm touching on it too much. Didn't like it that much, but he wasn't really worried about it. I'm going to rub first before I kind of tap. I want him okay with it rubbing all over him. He's listening to it, but he's not reacting. Go ahead and retreat. When you retreat, don't retreat for 5 seconds and come right back. Wait for this sign. You know, wait for one of those relaxation signs that says, oh, when they get that kind of release some of that anxiety a little bit.